Welcome to Weird Week. My name is Josh, and today we're going to be covering all of the weird things that have happened this week as we shift out of the old timeline and into this crazy new world. UFOs swarming all over US bases in the UK and in the United States. We've got someone who claims to have proof that we are actually living in a simulation. And I also want to talk about some of my personal experiences with the gateway tapes from Robert Monroe at the Monroe Institute. We're also going to be covering a lot more weirdness that's happened this week. If you've been enjoying the content, please subscribe, like the video. It really helps the channel grow. But the best thing you can do is sharing this video with all of your weird friends who are interested in the world's high strangeness, just like we are. But without rambling anymore, let's get into all of the weird things that have been happening this week. As always, we're going to be kicking off with the latest in the UAP topic because, in my opinion, this is the biggest story in the world. UFO YouTuber Strange Mysteries made a really interesting video this week claiming that he received an email from an anonymous source that decided to leak him some UFO footage and pictures. Now, obviously, immediately my red flags are going off. Like, why would someone who's high up in the military decide to share this with some random YouTuber? And to be fair to him, he's not necessarily random. He's got nearly 2 million subscribers. But he was reading through some of the emails and the information he was given. And when he came across words like skunkworks and the legacy program, he read them like they were words he'd never read before. Like, he didn't know what skunkworks or the legacy program was. And I feel like if you've spent, 20 minutes in the UFO conversation for the last couple of years, you would probably know that skunkworks is Lockheed Martin's kind of secret black projects. Well, it's not even secret, it's public. But that's where they work on the sort of top secret cutting edge technology. And it's assumed that that's where a lot of these secrets are kept. And obviously the legacy program is the program that's been retrieving and reverse engineering UFOs for 60 years or God knows how long. So naturally I began to think, why has this whistleblower chosen this YouTuber specifically? And to be fair, it seemed like the YouTuber was almost asking the same question. He did seem very skeptical. His emotional kind of reaction to what was happening and as he was reading the emails didn't seem like a hoax. But obviously there's still a lot of questions to be answered. Now, again, in his defense, he reverse image searched the images that he was shown and there was no matches. Now, since the video has come out, if you reverse image search these images, they're everywhere because obviously this stuff has kind of gone viral and now they're all over the internet. But in his defense, reverse image search before this stuff went online and there were no matches, and I've never seen them before either. So it seems like there is some legitimacy to these photos, but there's also a lot of weirdness about the person who leaked them. So after the first email came, he obviously made a video sharing all the stuff because that is what the whistleblower, I guess, wanted him to do. And naturally, these videos are infrared or FLIR. They're not the HD color videos that we all want to see. So naturally, the skeptics are coming out, and some of these UFO photos were really weird shapes that we've kind of never really seen before. Some people attributed them to a ceiling fan after the first video, whether they were being serious or, trying to make a joke out of it, I'm not entirely sure. But what I found really strange was that the whistleblower who was sending these emails kind of got really upset about that and basically replied to this YouTuber with a final slide of UFO photos, but basically saying, this is it. Like, if your community isn't ready to handle this seriously and call them ceiling fans, then I'm not going to put my neck out and risk my safety in sharing them with you anymore. Which I found really strange because, first of all, you're getting upset that people don't know enough about something that's been intentionally hidden from them for 60 years. By, I guess, people related to you, the whistleblower, right? Like, you obviously know about this, you know how secret this stuff is, and you're sharing it and then getting upset when people don't know about it. It just kind of seemed a bit strange to me, a very weird reaction to have. If your genuine intention was to get this stuff out there because people don't know about it, why would you get upset when people don't know about it? I don't know. I just found that really odd. And they kind of went back and forth a little bit more, and he basically said, you can show these last slides, but I want you to blur out these specific photos. Now, the photos that they did blur out do sound pretty interesting. Specifically, the one that's labeled HD close-up of a mothership with some sort of open bay door. And we can kind of tell from the blurry thumbnail of this one, it does seem like a very close-up photo. Like you can kind of see that little discoloration in the middle, which I would assume is this open bay door. And the rest of this darkness is a ship. So I don't know how high quality this photo is. It is labeled as HD. So I feel like that could be a really interesting photo. But nonetheless, some of these other pictures that we're seeing are really interesting shapes that we've really never seen before. Now we've got some triangular boomerang shaped craft, which aren't new, but definitely we've never seen them in this kind of quality before, especially this one, another boomerang. That's a really interesting photo. So there's a couple of really interesting things that I want to point out about these. First of all, the cruciform entity flyby photo and the chandelier looking UAP. Now they're really weird shapes, kind of like a ball with these giant spikes coming out of it, right? We've never seen anything like that before, at least in the UAP space. And then we've got the close encounter with the 1967 UK Flying Cross UAP, witnessed by Angus Brooks. Now, after doing a little bit of digging online, I found this video, which was published in 2022, so 2 years ago, and it's labeled 1967 UFO case, Devon Constables encounter a UAP UK. So this is the same year as this photo was allegedly taken, the close encounter with the 1967 UK Flying Cross. So it's in the UK, same country, same year. But I want you to just look at these chandelier and cruciform shapes for this video. Check this out.
Describe it to us. Well, the object was likened unto a cross.
How high would that be on an estimate?
Well, it varied at varying points of its journey. It was attaining high altitude and was down to sort of treetop levels at other times.
Well, what would the height be from the top of it to the bottom?
It would be hard to distinguish because, of course, it was...
Constable Willie just said, here we go then, and we drove off after it, if you know what I mean.
What kind of speed were you travelling at?
We were travelling very fast.
60 sound, was it?
No sound that I heard at all. There was no outside noise apart from the noise of the car itself.
And the acceleration away from us was terrific. So really, we didn't get under it to hear any sound.
But you were really close enough to be absolutely certain that your eyes weren't fooling you.
Oh yes, it was just in front of us.
There was no question whatsoever that this was a figment of the imagination. It was definitely there. It was definitely either manned by some sort of being or remotely controlled. It was definitely being controlled to view our car or...
You had the feeling that it was watching you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
What those two police officers have just sketched out there and what their account is basically exactly what we can see here in the chandelier looking UAP, and I guess also in the cruciform entity flyby photo. Really weird, really interesting. I'd never heard of this case before. I've never seen this kind of shape reported before. And this video has 1,311 views on it, published 2 years ago. And I would say a lot of them have come from the last few days when this got posted online in relation to these UFO leaks. So Strange Mysteries has kind of been posting updates as this has been happening. As of now, it sounds like the whistleblower doesn't really want to talk anymore. He's upset at how everyone has reacted. I'm really not too sure what to make of it. I don't think Strange Mysteries or anyone really is either. These photos certainly weren't available anywhere on the internet before they were brought out by Strange Mysteries. But the behavior of the whistleblower is kind of strange as well. So we'll keep you updated with that if anything else happens. Now, if you follow me on TikTok, you might have seen this video. It's a video about Cliff High, who, using his webbot software, which scans the internet, making predictions based on all the language and themes that it finds. In 2009, it predicted that one day, Joe Rogan would interview Donald Trump, and 39 days after that, we would see UFOs fighting other UFOs, fighting military jets, a big melee in the sky. Now, at the time of making that video, it was just after Trump went on Joe Rogan's podcast. And that's why I made the video, because I thought To predict that in 2009, when it was just Donald Trump, the guy from The Apprentice, and Joe Rogan, the guy from Fear Factor, that's such an odd thing to predict to actually come true 15 years later. Now, I made the video because I thought for such an oddly specific thing to actually come true was kind of strange and interesting. And obviously I'm interested in the UFO topic, but I didn't actually expect us to be where we are today. As tensions continue to escalate between the United States and Russia and the Ukraine war, there are now drones all over United States military bases in the UK and even in the United States itself. And there seems to be a really big focus around military bases that house nuclear power or nuclear weapons, specifically Lakenheath Air Force Base. I hope I've said that right. So there are videos from locals not only showing strange lights in the sky with rigid triangular formations, but also what seems to be electrical interference happening to their appliances in their houses at Lakenheath.
Right, I'm not touching it. And it's going fucking mental.
Now, at the time of making this video, Cliff High's 39 days to melee prediction is due to come true in about 3 or 4 days, depending on your time zone. Now, Cliff has stated that the specific date isn't necessarily pinpoint accurate, but it's a rough estimate. And with the way things are going, I wouldn't be surprised to see it come true. And it isn't just Lakenheath either. So just days ago, this orb was photographed at Manchester Airport floating inches off the ground. And this photo has been verified all over the web. It went wild on X and Reddit, and it's now been verified by multiple users and pilots and staff of Manchester Airport. Now, this photo obviously isn't great, so there's been some enhancements of it, and someone even did a 3D rendition of what it might look like. Now, when I first looked at this 3D rendition, I thought it looked exactly like a blend shader in Maya. If anyone has experience in 3D software, this looks exactly like a blend shader. I'm not saying that's what it is, but it's the first thing I thought of when I saw these 3D renditions. Now, interestingly enough, earlier this year in January, it was reported that the United States would be moving some of their nuclear weapons to Lakenheath Air Force Base. And if you spent more than 5 minutes in ufology, you would know that UFOs have a very particular interest in nuclear power and nuclear weapons. Now, the mainstream media and all the military generals are saying these are just drones. But we know America are very protective of their airspace, and so they should be. In 2023, they scrambled F-22 fighter jets to shoot down a Chinese spy balloon. Now, this Chinese spy balloon was 60,000 feet in the air, which is well above where a commercial airliner would fly normally. And it was miles off the coast of the mainland. So this balloon wasn't even on the land yet. It was approaching 60,000 feet in the air, and they got up and shot it down straight away. Now we have drones literally hovering off the ground and all over military bases, and they're telling us that it's nothing to worry about. They're just drones. It's all good. Make that make sense. Why are these drones all of a sudden nothing to worry about? And why are you leaving them there? Why are you not removing them? Like, even if they are nothing to worry about, if they're above your bases, don't you care? Do you not want to get rid of them? Not a problem. You're happy with them just sitting there? Okay. Bit weird. Now, evidently, I'm not the only one who feels this way, because Major General Pat Ryder was asked some of these questions here in a press conference. Now, we'll watch that, but keep in mind, this is the same Major General who not long ago came out in the same setting and said there is absolutely no evidence at all to be found of UFOs, alien life, or anything like that. And there's nothing to see here.
U.S. bases, a kind of swarming U.S. bases, challenging security. Do you believe they have hostile intent? Do you believe they were sent by a foreign adversary? What is happening with, what can you tell us about these drones?
What I would tell you, Jennifer, is that they are being actively monitored. Installation leaders have determined so far that none of these incursions impact the base residents, the facilities, or the assets that we have on those bases. We're, of course, continuing to work with host nation authorities and our mission partners to ensure the safety of our personnel, our facilities, and the equipment. You know, the bottom line is it's something that we're going to take seriously. We're continuing to look into it, but as of right now has not had any significant mission impact.
Why Not shoot them down.
Well, I won't get into force protection measures. We, of course, always maintain the right to defend ourselves if we deem something to be a threat. But again, we'll continue to work with the local host nation authorities there.
So they're looking into it. And this has been going on for nearly 10 days now, really ramping up in the last couple of days. These things are everywhere. If you look on X and Reddit, there are sightings all over the place. But they don't deem them a threat for some reason. They're quite happy with these drones or whatever they are to be sitting over sensitive military airspace. How do they explain this video? So just before I press play, the red light that you can kind of see in the top leftish part of the video is a drone or a UFO. And the light that you can see moving towards it, that before we start the video, it's roughly around the center of the frame, just to the right. That is an F-18 or some kind of fighter jet. I don't know of the exact model, but it's some kind of plane that's intercepting. And you can see, as it approaches, you can see the flashing lights that are standard with any kind of plane in the air. And watch how this UFO that is currently stationary, it's sitting stationary right now. Watch how it reacts. Approaching, it's stationary. Watch how it moves. Boom, gets out of there. And it's way quicker than the fighter jet is moving. It is out of there. That is instantaneous acceleration. That thing was sitting there and just went, I'm out. And as you can see, way quicker than the plane that approached it. So don't worry, man. They're just drones. They're just drones, man. Chinese air balloons that are floating thousands of feet in the air, miles off the coast. That is a threat. We will shoot them down straight away. But unknown drones that we're still investigating what they are, hovering right above our military bases. They're not a threat. Don't worry about those. Make sure you tune into Love Island this week. I think your sports team is playing as well. And did you know we're in a cost of living crisis? Yeah. Lots of stuff that you really need to be worried about there. But these things that we can't work out what they are, don't worry, man. They're just drones. Nothing to see here. All jokes aside, in my opinion, these can only be one of two things. First of all, they either are UFOs from a completely unknown origin, technology that we have no idea how it works, because they have been interfering with nuclear weapons and nuclear power facilities for decades. Even going back to World War II, these things seem to show up in times of global conflict. There are multiple accounts of World War II pilots sighting orbs, tailing and following their planes, which they labeled Foo Fighters back in the day. That's where the band gets their name from. And back then, it was assumed that these Foo Fighters were perhaps enemy technology, which we now realize was obviously not the case, because certainly back then, we didn't have that kind of technology. And as far as we know, we don't have it now either, and we're seeing the same kind of things. The only other option is this is yet another display of power from Russia. Earlier this week, after they said, please don't fire long-range missiles into Russia, and then Joe Biden within 24 hours fired long-range missiles into Russia, they had their first display of power, showcasing this, I guess, new missile system, this new technology that we've never seen before. I can't really explain to you how it works, but from this video, it seems like something is perhaps sitting high up in the sky above the clouds and just raining missiles down into the ground at speeds well over the speed of sound, from what I've read. Now, in this video, this display of power, these missiles were shot down with like a non-explosive warhead on it. So they were kind of like dud-tend missiles, I guess, because Russia just wanted to say, hey, look, this is what we've got. Stop firing missiles deep into Russia, or we're going to use this stuff. It was said that these missiles could carry nuclear weapons. So imagine all of these things raining down with a nuclear bomb on it. That's the potential here. So there is the potential that these orbs could be another display of power. Russia swarming the nuclear bases, again, as a way to say, look at what we've got. Like, you don't want to come any closer. You don't want to fuck with us. We know that America have crazy technology deep in black projects. That's kind of common knowledge now. Skunkworks, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, all those companies. It would be naive to assume that Russia, another global superpower, don't have their own version of this. And who knows, maybe they're a lot further down the line in reverse engineering it than we are. Either way, whatever possibility you pick from those two, it leads me to think that Cliff High's 39 days to melee prediction of UFOs fighting UFOs in the sky, fighting other military jets in the sky, is shaping up exactly how he said it would be. But just before we wrap this story up, I'm going to throw in a spanner in the works just to show you how weird our world is. These are statues that are stationed outside the Vatican and the United Nations headquarters. Make of them what you will. Don't worry, man, they're just drones. The mainstream media, and specifically the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, have yet again publicly demonstrated why they are a dying breed and should not, under any circumstances, be taken seriously. After being asked why he believes that Joe Rogan's podcast is so popular, the prehistoric dinosaur known as Kim Williams, who is in charge of the Australian propaganda machine, went on the most hypocritical, unhinged rant that basically told us how out of touch with reality he is.
Look, I'm not sure that I'm the right person to respond to that question. I am not a consumer or enthusiast about Mr.
Right, so just there, he's told us that he doesn't watch Joe Rogan. So we can therefore establish he has never had the opportunity to actually make his own mind up about Joe Rogan or consumed any of Joe's content to see what kind of person he actually is. Let's continue.
Rogan and his work.
Shocking.
I am not one of the 3 billion, and I'm unlikely to be 3 billion and one anytime soon.
Mate, you probably don't even know how to get on YouTube, to be fair.
I think people like Mr. Rogan prey on people's vulnerabilities. They prey on fear. They prey on anxiety. They prey on all of the elements that contribute to uncertainty in society.
I just can't believe that the ABC or any mainstream media outlet would say that as a reason to like try and defame an alternative media source when they are literally the pioneers of writing stories to instill fear in people. The ABC is literally like a breeding ground of division.
And they entrepreneur fantasy outcomes and conspiracy outcomes as being a normal part of social narrative. I personally find it deeply repulsive. And to think that someone has such remarkable power in the United States is something that I look at in disbelief.
They look at it in disbelief because they can't believe that their media propaganda machine has been overthrown and is dying. The people are waking up and realizing how much bullshit is fed to them by government-funded media outlets that are clearly on the payroll of Big Pharma and other giant corporations that use outlets like the ABC to push their narratives.
I'm also absolutely in dismay that this can be a source of public entertainment when it's really treating the public as plunder for purposes that are really quite malevolent.
That's the leader of the ABC saying that Joe Rogan preys on people's anxieties and fears and creates content that is quite malevolent. So let's look at some of the things that the ABC have done recently. This is Heston Russell. He is an ex-commando in the Australian Special Forces, someone who I consider to be a war hero, not because I know him personally, but someone who's willing to put their life on the line and represent my country, and not just as a general infantry. This guy's a Green Beret. Like, the stuff these people have to go through just in training to be able to put that hat on would break any normal man or woman. So I immediately respect somebody like this. Now, a few years ago, the ABC decided to run a story about Heston Russell that he allegedly killed an Afghan prisoner after they were loading, I think, 6 prisoners onto the back of a chopper. And the pilot allegedly said that we can only fit 5. And after he heard that call from the pilot, there was a gunshot, and Heston Russell said, we have 5 prisoners. Now, the ABC ran this story, citing their source as an anonymous source that later came out to have overheard radio chatter from the pilot. So this is someone apparently listening to the radio, hearing the pilot say, "We can only fit 6 prisoners," and then hearing a gunshot, and then Heston Russell saying, "We now have 5 prisoners." That's what this whole story was based on. And the ABC ran this through the entire mainstream media in Australia to defame this person who has risked his life for the country that this media is supposedly representing. Now, Heston Russell came out to defend himself against these claims, and the ABC then doubled down and aired more footage, which was a 15-second clip taken from a much longer video where it was claimed that Heston Russell was firing on an unarmed Afghani civilian from a chopper. And we see this footage of a few gunshots happening. Again, Heston Russell came out trying to defend himself, trying to show the entire footage and give it some context and explain what was actually happening there. But the most twisted part is that in this raw footage, you see that there's only 1 or 2 gunshots. And in the footage that the ABC aired, there's like 6. They literally edited in sound effects of gunshots happening to make it look like he was spraying bullets at this person, opposed to just 1 or 2 warning shots. So Heston Russell sued the ABC for this. He won the case. But strangely enough, the ABC have never really apologized or admitted this. They ran an investigation that found that there was no reason to find that any footage was doctored or edited. Like, what is the ABC's agenda? To be reporting something like this about a hero of our country, and you're meant to be a government-funded news organization of the same country. More recently, the ABC were putting out stories that were sympathizing with people protesting in support of Hezbollah and registered terrorist organizations in Sydney. This was happening in Australia. And Peter Dutton, regardless of what you might think of him, he's an MP for the Liberal Party here in Australia, was questioned by a journalist as to why Hezbollah are labeled a terrorist organization. I really couldn't figure it out myself.
What, sorry?
What determines the fact that Hezbollah is a terrorist organisation, even though many...
Where are you from, I'm sorry? Which organisation?
ABC.
ABC. So what's the question from the ABC, just to be very clear?
I just wanted to find out because groups have commented on the...
No, but you asked about the listing of the organisation. I just didn't understand that question, sorry.
Yeah, so...
This is a question from Canberra, is it? You're reading it from your phone?
No. So just wanted to ask, in terms of looking into that for the investigation, you've asked the Prime Minister and the Minister to direct the ANRB in its investigation.
No, that wasn't the question you asked. What was the question you asked?
I just wanted to understand.
No, you asked the question about the listing, so I just want you to just ask that question again.
If you could just sort of explain what...
Peter Dutton is an ex-police officer, and regardless of what you think of him, he has said and done some maybe questionable things in the past. I love the way he grills people.
What determines something of a terrorist organisation?
Well, I had presumed, up until this point at least, the ABC supported the government's laws, and the government has passed laws supported on a bipartisan basis, but not by the ABC, it seems, in relation to the prescribing or the listing of a terrorist organisation. Hezbollah, under Australian law, is a listed terrorist organisation. Now, if the ABC doesn't support that, they should be very clear about it, because I think that's quite a departure. But you asked me why our country has listed Hezbollah. They're a terrorist organisation. They organise terrorist attacks. And if that is not clear to the ABC, then I think the ABC is in greater trouble than even I first imagined.
So there you go. That is the kind of organisation that the ABC is, which, by the way, is funded by the taxpayers and the government. These are the kind of stories that they're running, and you have to ask why. In last week's episode, when we looked at RFK, it was the ABC who published a story calling him an anti-vaxxer, when we also played the clip where RFK gave his opinion about vaccines, and they're very reasonable. He's not anti-vax. He just believes that things should be tested and there should be mandates against things being shoved and passed through without any kind of testing. So I really don't know where the ABC get off. I don't know what their agenda is. I don't think they'll be around much longer, or at least no one's going to be listening. Now, this week for our creator shout out, we're going to be looking at the Danny Jones podcast. He had a guest on this week named Danny Goler. I hope I said that right. Now, if you find the conversation about the nature of our reality to be a little bit scary, or it kind of freaks you out a little bit, this maybe isn't the story to listen to. Danny Goler claims to have proof that we live in a simulation. And the way that he's done this is by figuring out that after ingesting DMT, if you look through a diffracted laser projected onto a wall, you can literally see lines of code in the wall. Now, this code isn't necessarily ones and zeros, but they're symbols that look closer to ancient Greek writing than any kind of language that we have today. I actually first heard about this years ago online, and I guess it must have been through Danny, because he does talk about in this podcast that this has been in the making for a long time and that he's kind of contacted scientists. And I guess the fact that Danny himself isn't necessarily a scientist means that maybe some people aren't quite taking him too seriously, or they just don't have the time. I don't know what it is, but he's basically going out on his own with this documentary and a little bit of help to kind of get the word out there. I'm going to show you the trailer that he debuted on this podcast, and we can see what you think.
I remember things very vividly from a very young age. When I was a little kid, I actually spent a lot of time with my grandparents. My grandfather was a nuclear physicist. I remember he was telling me about black holes, and that terrified me.
I was like, that's just mind-boggling. It's a monster, right?
But at the same time, it fascinated me. And I said to myself, how do we know that? This unthinkably massive thing. I realized that nature doesn't keep secrets. It's only a matter of, do we understand? What tools can we use to expand our knowledge? And for me, dimethyltryptamine, also known as DMT, was the tool that led me to the discovery.
When I first saw the phenomenon, it was like, holy shit!
But then it was actually like, whoa, what is happening?
Am I losing my mind? But then I showed other people, and things kept getting weirder.
Just for the record, I haven't told him anything. Okay, just tell me what you see.
Oh my God, come on.
Wow, what the fuck? Holy shit. I just saw something. Yeah. What the fuck?
Oh, I see that. I feel it.
I've been under the influence of mind-altering substances a lot, but I've never seen anything like that. Whoa.
I showed over 100 people, and I kept asking myself, how are all of us seeing the same thing?
Oh my God. It's changing shapes right there.
The laser was revealing numbers and letters running in a pattern.
They're almost like this big here, and it looks like code.
It looked like...
That was a thick laser.
That's why I told you.
Something, and I just want to take a picture of it and translate it.
Wow.
You see that?
Okay, so yeah, it's not stuck.
No.
It's not because of the light.
No, it's on its own side. Light is just literally revealing it.
And each angle shows you different layers, different ways through it.
I could see through the wall. It's not like a hallucination. It has spatial awareness and permanence. I don't know. Whoa.
For centuries, mankind has attempted to explore these psychedelic, altered states, but we've never had a repeatable, testable phenomenon to observe until now.
Wow. I'm obsessed.
It's like you could see through the laser into another dimension.
I mean, like, take yourself to that. Like, I just made a connection that nobody made before, which is a simple connection. The claim is, if you project a diffracted laser on the surface and you smoke DMT, you will see code running in surfaces. Yes, like in the Matrix.
So there are a few possibilities. One,
I lost my mind, which is the coolest losing your mind ever in history.
the second option is that
this is the biggest discovery of humankind. If anybody ever asked themselves what it would be like to know you live in the Matrix for sure, well, I know for sure. I'm convinced.
So where do we go from here? All I know is
it's about to get crazy.
Now, Danny has tested this with hundreds of different people. He has gotten people in for the test, not told them a thing, shined the laser and asked them what they see. And they all see the same thing. Despite this all being such a mind-bending conversation, I really like how Danny carries himself. He's very well-spoken. You can tell he's very educated. And it's just really cool listening to someone who is very grounded approach such a mind-bending topic with a genuine curiosity and not being afraid about being open to some different interpretations of reality. I think the skeptics and the people who will look for a reason to just debunk this without actually looking into it are going to take the easy road of saying, oh, well, he's taking psychedelics. Of course, he's going to be seeing things. Psychedelics create a very individual experience. Everyone interprets and perceives reality and has different experiences on psychedelics on an individual basis. They don't all see the same things. This was tested with what Danny claims was hundreds of people, which are allegedly in this documentary, some of which knew about the code, some of which didn't, but they all had the same experience. If you've seen the podcast, I'd love to hear what you think about it. If not, I highly recommend that you go and check it out. I really think that with where we are right now, at this kind of tipping point of society, as we seem to be pushing into another world war, it can only go one of two ways. And I feel like for things to go in a good way and for society to kind of have that revolution and evolve to the next level where we perhaps stop warring with each other constantly and we can find a way out of this conflict, I think the only way to do that is to be open to new ways of thinking, open to the idea that our reality is perhaps not quite how we understand it, and that as a civilization, as humanity, as one, we need to stop consuming things that are filling our minds with fear and negativity, and we need to look inside, focus on ourselves, and raise our vibration as a whole. Expanding consciousness, trying to come into a state of higher awareness. This is something that I've been trying to do recently through the Gateway tapes, which were created by Robert Monroe, who founded the Monroe Institute. Now, I'll talk about my personal experience with these tapes so far, but before I do that, I want to just give you a brief outline of who Robert Monroe is, what the Gateway tapes are, for anyone who might not know. So Robert Monroe was someone who used to have spontaneous out-of-body experiences. So these things were happening to him completely uncontrolled and unexpectedly. And at first he was kind of frightened by them, but then he decided to do a bit of research into them, and that is when he founded the Monroe Institute. This was designed to study human consciousness, but specifically the sounds and frequencies that can be used to induce certain states of consciousness and awareness. Now, he did this by developing a technique called hemisync. I'm doing my best to explain this, so hopefully I'm not going to butcher it. The way that it works is it plays a different frequency sound in each ear of the headphones, and they're slightly different from one another. But the reason why this works is because your brain will actually interpret the difference. Now, this is meant to be like the state that when you're maybe like working on a creative project or playing a sport and you're just kind of in the zone or you're in that flow. This is meant to be sort of like a subconscious flow state. And this is what this hemisync technology is meant to help induce, but at different levels of awareness. It's kind of like training wheels for meditation. And the reason why I say it's like training wheels is because these are in a set of tapes that start from the very bare bones basics all the way up to a higher focus level, which can be used to remote view and astral project, like completely controlled out of body experiences. So that brings me to today, in the last couple of weeks, where I've been experimenting with the Gateway tapes from Robert Monroe. And I've only done, I think, the first 3 or 4, which are essentially getting you to the first level of focus, which is getting you to a state where your body is asleep and your mind is awake. And from the readings, this is essentially the point that you need to be able to get to and remain in control, which acts as a launch pad into deeper states of consciousness. Now, when you're at this point, it almost feels like your body is so heavy that it's like part of the bed, and that you could move it if you wanted to, but you don't need to. It's this really interesting feeling of a complete disconnection between your body and your mind. But it felt like my body I could feel the energy around my body, for lack of a better description. It felt like surrounding my body, I was in an air bubble where the temperature of the air dropped by several degrees. So I wasn't cold, but it was like a very soft fan was blowing over my whole body. That's what it felt like. And you're just in this deep state of relaxation. As I said before, these are tapes used for astral projection, intentional out-of-body experiences. These tapes can be used to train remote viewers, but it's wild, and everyone seems to kind of report feeling so much better, feeling more clarity. And I feel that if the whole world was using these tapes, America wouldn't be firing long-range missiles into Russia. So I didn't really know if this kind of fit the whole Weird Week thing, but it's kind of different, and it's something of a personal experience that I've been having recently, and I know that there's thousands of other people who have had similar experiences or who are using these tapes. So this is a journey that I'm going to continue to go on. I'm not sure if I'll update you every Weird Week, but maybe if I have any significant breakthroughs, I'll let you know. And if you have any questions about it, let me know in the comments. So wrapping up the show, I'm always going to give you the weirdest thing that I came across during the week. And today, that is 7,000-year-old reptilian statues that were discovered in ancient Mesopotamia. Now, if you don't know, Mesopotamia is essentially modern-day Iraq, as well as other little small parts of like Turkey, Syria, and Kuwait as well, and Iran. So it's essentially a region of land that isn't necessarily recognized today, but is made up of multiple countries that we now have. Last week, we looked at a story from a creator on TikTok named Ashley, where she talked about the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is an ancient story that took place in the city of Uruk, which today is called Iraq, and how in 2003, we actually found what we think is the tomb of Gilgamesh, and how 5 months later, the US invaded Iraq and built heavy military presence around this tomb. And now this week, we have this story about reptilian statues discovered in the same area. Now as well, not too far away is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. So there's something about this area of the world that carries a lot of mysterious ancient history, things that aren't really widely recognized, but are in a lot of ancient texts. So these statues were found at the archaeological site of Al-Ubaid, and the Ubaid period is a prehistoric period of Mesopotamia, and the place where, according to many, modern civilization was kickstarted with the Sumerians. And it's during these times where we see these strange kind of kickstarts into modern building, agriculture, tools. It's as if these things just came from nowhere, or they were taught to people. And the people of this time, who were seemingly given this unfounded knowledge, felt some kind of need or desire to create these humanoid lizard figurines. But it's just so weird, like, why? In today's day and age, we can sketch out like a rough idea of something with a pen and paper, and then we could maybe go and make a more fortified version of it. At least how we understand it, these people just kind of created as they went. And if you're creating something into stone or carving it out of a rock, it's probably for a good reason. You're probably not chipping away at a rock, just hashing out ideas, if you know what I mean. You've probably got a very clear image and reason and motive as to what you're doing. And obviously, this isn't the only case of these kind of things in ancient cultures. The Aztecs and the Mayans had the Quetzalcoatl and the Kukulkan. I probably butchered those names, but they had serpent deities represented in their civilization. The Aboriginal people in my country, Australia, they talk about the rainbow serpent in the dream time. And I mean, even in the Bible, there is the snake, right? The snake in the Garden of Eden that talks to Eve. There is some kind of link to reptiles. I don't know what it is, but it goes back a long time across all cultures and religions. And if you've been on TikTok or browsed any kind of conspiracy thread or forum on Reddit, you've probably heard about the underground tunnels through LA and almost all of the important places in America. Well, this article talks about a legend of 5,000 years ago, a meteor shower caused strange beings described as lizard people to seek refuge underground. And in doing so, these creatures created an elaborate network of tunnels located beneath Los Angeles using advanced technologies that could melt rock. Once again, make of that what you will. I'm just the messenger telling you how weird our world is, because this stuff is happening right now, every day, every week. So that's it for this week, guys. If you enjoyed the episode, once again, please subscribe, like the video, share it around with all your weird friends. It really helps me grow this YouTube channel. And if you've personally seen anything strange or weird going on, get in touch with me. I'm on X @PolarityJosh or TikTok @PolarityMedia. But that is all for today, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week.